Welcome again. Welcome to the information session for our spring cycle for competitive grant, our grants process. For those that are familiar with this process, as you know, last year was the first year we experimented with splitting into two calls for applications, one in the fall and one in what we call the spring, which launches now. For those that are new to us, just so you understand, this is funding that we have allocated for fiscal year or calendar year, which is the same for us in 2024. That's why we have one call in the fall and we do a second at the top of the year that we call the spring, and it's all using funding that's available for grant making in the calendar year of 2024. So that's why you see split years, because our process actually opens at the end of the previous year, and that can sometimes cause a little confusion. I'm gonna, as I mentioned many times to many people, I try to give lots of information in PowerPoint slides. I don't necessarily read all the information or speak to every single bullet point. Everyone will be receiving a copy of the slides, so don't worry. You don't have to try to screen capture or write down word for word frantically anything I may skip. You will get them. And then, of course, we're happy to answer questions during this as well as afterwards. If you come up with a question afterwards, please, by all means, send us an email, and we're happy to respond to those. All right. As I mentioned, since we have split into two calls for applications, we are defining our terms. So as you see terms used throughout this or in general on our website, when we speak of the annual process, it is always referred to in a split year, 2023-2024, because we do a call for applications in the fall or at the end of the calendar year 2023. We do a second at the top of the year in 2024, but it's all funding that is allocated and available for grant making in the current calendar year, which is 2024. When I speak about a cycle, that's what we're talking about right now. So we are going into the spring cycle of applications. Okay, so what type of applications will we be reviewing this spring? Well, pretty much you name it, we'll be reviewing it. We have up to 8-9 committees that could potentially participate in the process, depending on the applications that come in and what the areas of interest are, or the field of interest, if there's funding available, as well as if there are applications under consideration. So they could be applications that are general operating support for 501c3 organizations. They could be an application for a specific program or project that serves a broad group or a demographic or a region in any of those areas that we have listed both here and on our website. And that's things like arts, culture, community health, economic development, social services, animal welfare, recreation, and of course, some of our field of interest funds, such as our Women and Girls Fund and our St. Luke's Home Fund, which is veterans and seniors, and our Animals Respect and Friendship Fund and our Killingworth Community Fund are all very active, and they always are very interested in what's happening. And those will be using the general application, which I'll speak to in a little bit. We will also be accepting applications for the Mary Janvrin and Natalie Janvrin Wiggins Fund for Birds, Other Animals, and Nature. That has very specific guidelines. I will speak to that in this presentation as well. And it does have its own application, but it follows the same timeline and criteria guidelines as our regular, what we call the general application cycle. All of this will be funding that will be available as of July of this year. So I will mention this several times. These applications cannot be for funding that you have already expended. You already have expended or will have expended costs by, say, June 30th. We don't back pay budgets. We only forward pay organization costs and programs, okay? So I always stress that. Okay, who can request funding from the Community Foundation? Any organization that is a 501c3 nonprofit organization may apply. Those organizations do have the option of either choosing to apply for a specific program or project, or general operating support. Now, let me make some clarifications on the general operating support, because we are big fans of general operating support, because we know that pretty much in order to do a program or a project, it takes operations money, right? So it's all tied together one way or the other. If you're going to request for a program or project, it's going to have some operations costs built into that. We totally get that. But we will look at general requests for general operating. Like, we need to just do our mission, and we're fundraising from lots of groups and individuals to build up our operations fund for this year. If the majority of your work or all of your work is done within our footprint in Middlesex County, we will do that. If you are a statewide agency and Middlesex County is about 5% of your general operating, we would prefer that you actually apply for the specific program or project that serves our community, because then you can speak to more directly the work you're doing for our communities, any or all of our 15 towns, and it doesn't sort of get tied up into a much larger regional or statewide operations budget, which can be enormous. If you are interested in that, and most of you just looking down the list here could definitely do a general operating narrative. Sometimes people will tell you those narratives for applications can be a little more difficult to write, because you really have to think about how do you tie in the request for funding to all the stuff you do without going down lots of wormholes and getting really sidetracked and being too vague or giving like so much information no one can grasp. It really takes some thoughtfulness, and it does still require a final evaluation should you receive a grant award, which means you have to be able to connect all the dots afterwards. I'm not trying to say don't apply for general operating. I just want to clarify the difference between a very specific program or project application. If your group is under fiscal sponsorship, or you are what's known as a government entity. And what that means is if you're a municipality, right? If you fall under the 170 sections, if you're a school district, if you are a very large healthcare organization or hospital managed programs, you must apply solely for a specific program or project. And these must be budget enhancing, not budget replacing. And school districts, and I don't know that a school district is on today, but I clarify this in case anybody comes in to watch the video afterwards. A school district as a whole is limited to a maximum of 2 applications, and they cannot be for both district-wide. They usually tend to be maybe a district-wide and maybe one specific school because somebody needs something. A teacher is looking to do some supplemental enhancement programming. We don't take more than that, and there's no guarantee. Well, there's no guarantee across the board of submitting an application and having it funded. I should have probably said that at the outright. But our competitive process is exactly that. It's competitive, but this is the best way for us to get a good handle on what the needs are in our community, because we continue to work year-round to find funding and other resources to share with our nonprofits. Faith-based organizations are eligible to apply as for a project or a program only, as long as the program or project is a broad community charitable purpose and does not require adherence to religious doctrine to participate. Must be open to everyone, regardless of what that person believes or what their involvement is. So it has to be a secular, not a religious purpose. And of course, collaborations are always of interest and always welcome. Now, I'm going to spend a few minutes here because sometimes this causes some problems because it seems like an overwhelming list. And sometimes I end up getting applications to review that meet one of the criteria of things we will not fund. And then I have to call the organization and say, I'm so sorry, we can't accept your application. So let's touch on this for a few minutes. And I'm going to hit some of the highlights. You can read the whole list. I strongly encourage you, but let me hit some of the highlights. We do not make grants directly to individuals. So that means Abel Smith cannot submit an application and we make a grant to that individual. It must be a tax exempt entity. We also do not make grants to initiatives that then re-grant our funds. So that means we will not award a grant to Acme agency so that they can then turn around and run their own application process to re-grant our money into the community, okay? We believe very firmly and wholeheartedly in ensuring that any organization we support has very clear policies and practices in place to ensure that there is no discrimination. So that is one of the things that we always do our due diligence on. We will not accept applications for capital improvements, large building projects, and items or projects that fit the definition of fixed assets. This has been a stumbling block in the past, okay? So if you have a building project or if you have some renovations that you're hoping to get some support for, it's not that we won't consider it, but you first must do your due diligence to ensure that it does not qualify as a capital improvement, a major building project, or is not defined as a fixed asset, because we cannot accept applications to support those projects. As I mentioned at the outset, all of our funding considerations are going forward. No funding award can be used to recoup lost revenue, either previously in this year by the time the awards are made, or in previous years, or to back pay expenses you did not have funding to pay for when they were incurred. Also, programs and materials that are normally included in regular operating budgets with regard to municipal entities and school districts. So if it's if it should be in the general operating budget for one or the other of those are not acceptable applications. Event sponsorships and annual fundraising campaigns are also not eligible to apply for funding. Okay, so some of the ins and outs really quickly. I'm gonna sort of jump through some of this because these are pretty straightforward. It's on many of our pages and you'll see it. So the big thing, can your organization submit more than one application? No, it's one application per organization. And then we get the question, okay, well, you have the general application and you have the Janvrin application. Can we submit one of each because it's two different groups? No. If you qualify to do both general and Janvrin, you must decide which application you want to submit. So it's one application per organization. So then we get the question of, well, our organization is going to collaborate with somebody else on a project. Can we individually submit? If the collaboration under our friend is going to submit an application, can we then also apply separately? Well, you can, as long as what you're applying for has nothing to do with the program or project that you're a collaborator on, that someone else is applying for support. So that means if you are going to partner, Lori, I'm going to pick on you because you're right there on my screen. So I'm going to use Mark and I'm going to Mary, you're next. So High Hopes. So I'm going to say Mark and High Hopes are going to partner on a great, Walking the Ponies program. And High Hopes is going to apply for that. And then Mark wants to apply for a different program. They can, as long as they are in no way affiliated. It could not be the larger umbrella of your adult skills program if the Walking the Ponies program is underneath that, because then you are trying to get double funding for a single purpose, have to be completely separate. If you're not sure about that, but you do have the opportunity to collaborate with someone and you want further guidance on that, I am happy to schedule calls and talk that through with you.
And we do want to be clear.
Okay. General funding requests continue. So our general application. So let's go back for a second. General application is everything on this page of the PowerPoint that you're going to get except for the Mary Janvrin Fund. Okay. So that could be arts, that could be social services, that could be women and girls, that could be seniors, that could be veterans, any of those. That's considered a general application. That will be a maximum request of $5,000, and it uses the general application landing page on our website. Okay. The Janvrin Fund has very specific criteria. They will consider requests up to 15,000, but you have to meet all the criteria in order to submit that application. Here's the change this year. So for those that have been through this before, this is one of those times when I'm like, okay, everybody, here's one of the changes we have implemented. Beginning this application cycle, we will no longer consider applications where we are the sole funder for a program or project. So in the past, on occasion, we have gotten applications where the cost of a project is $5,000. The request is $5,000, and there is no other funding coming from anywhere to support the project. And we have accepted those in the past, and all we've asked is, why are we the only funder? We're seeing more and more of those without fully understanding why. And so we are going to make that change, that there should be some other, our pot just isn't big enough to do lots and lots and lots of these. And so we are saying that we will not consider an application if we are listed as the sole funder. Now, let me explain what sole funding is, right? That means there isn't even money allocated from an organization's operations budget towards that project, right? So if it's 5,000 to do the project and you were going to ask us for 5,000, that would be considered sole funding. If the project is 5,000 and you're asking us for 3 and you've got a special fundraiser you're doing for part of it, and then you have some of your operations budget, that we would consider. Again, we encourage, okay, Christine has her hand up. So you want to jump in and ask a question, Christine?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Thayer. I was just wondering if there are any constraints on who that other funder would be. Does it have to be another public organization? Could it be a private donor? You know, is there any requirements there?
Christine, that is a fabulous question, and thank you for asking it. No, there is no constraint. It could be another grant you were applying for. It could be a family foundation that's committed to your project. It could be 15 individual donors you can reach out to. And that we do have a project program budget summary that is required to be submitted with the application. And I'll go ahead and speak to it now. And Lori, don't let me forget to speak to it again when I get there, because you're an old hand at this and having filled this out many times. When it comes to individual donors, so if you're applying to the Jane Smith Family Foundation on the budget summary, there's a section that says who are the other funders, right? We're nosy. I'm the first one to say I am one of the nosiest people on the face of the earth. I will ask all those crazy questions. And you could list the Alice and Jane Smith Family Foundation, but you do not need to list the individual names of your personal individual donors who may commit to supporting your project. That is your business. We would not ask you to reveal that. So you could just say individual donors with the total amount on the summary budget. Steve, you have a question?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So you're not calling it a match, but in a sense, it's a match, and I wonder if there's a recommended ratio, a match rate.
That is It is, and you're right. It sounds like a match. We don't use the term match because you don't necessarily have to go out and find the other money. It could be money that you have set aside in your operations budget towards the project. You just don't have the whole thing set aside. So we don't have a recommended, we've done a lot of research on this, right? Some places give a percentage, some places give an amount. We recognize that different projects have different maximum costs. We also recognize that it may be a $15,000 project and you may ask us for 5. We may not be able to make a grant award of 5. We may end up only being able to make a grant award maybe of 2,500. So we have, at least as we make this shift in this, we've chosen not to put a minimum expectation, because we know that different organizations will look at how they're funding or how they're expensing things in their budget for programs and services in different ways. So what we're saying is you can no longer ask us for 5 and the total cost is going to be 5. That's the biggest change. So. I'm hedging a little, can you tell? But we didn't want to make it so constrained because some people may be putting things together. And I want to stress too, because this ties in, Christine, also with your question as well as Steve, we're not saying you have to have all the other money right away. You might be applying to us and you might be getting ready to do a special mail campaign, and you might be getting ready, to do a special fundraiser. It's at the outset, it's all, where are the estimated funding coming to get this done, right? You don't have to, it's not like you don't have to have everything in hand before we do ours. Okay.
Thayer, Mary Lawrence has a question.
Sure.
You're muted, Mary Lawrence.
Sorry about that. I was wondering whether we could apply to you for, say, the maximum of $5,000, and also apply to XYZ corporation for $5,000. Does it have to, can we do it for the same amount of money from the various peoples?
Yeah, that's up to you. I mean, however you want to split it and whatever, we're never going to come in and say, oh, no, you have to ask them for more than you've asked for us or anything. And for several reasons. One, because again, and I will say this over and over again, there's no guarantee of funding. We have a finite amount of funds available, and it just depends on how many applications. It is beneficial for us to know what's needed in the community, because we constantly are talking with fellow funders and donors and businesses, and we love to share information. But if another entity lets you also submit a maximum of 5,000, I would say, if you meet their criteria, do that, because you never want to run the risk of not. So, yeah. We will continue to track the question. This may be about the last time, but we know some communities are still using up their final pieces of their ARPA funding. And just so you know, we have a question on ours to determine who is receiving what little ARPA money, what the last pieces of ARPA that are still being distributed. It does not affect your application in any way, other than the fact, as I said earlier, we're really nosy. We ask a lot of questions because it helps us sort of track what's going on in the community, so that we can best determine where we can fill in gaps as well as share other information. So the question is on the application, but it does not affect the status of whether it will not prohibit you from being considered for an award. For those that have been through this process before, this is the second half of this year's competitive process. So we are continuing to table the 3-year on, 1-year off guideline. However, we also continue to evaluate that requirement, as well as in the overall assessing of applications. We do determine where the funding has come from for several years now, and prior grant awards will not guarantee support this year. We may make some changes to this for the next years process or cycles, plural, because we are trying to determine what the benefit has been as well as what the impact on our overall funding. So, but right now it's tabled for those that have been through the 3-year on, 1-year off process with us. For those that are new, and for those that have done applications in the past, you'll be excited. We haven't changed this. We have 2 core questions to our application. We've got a bunch of very simple demographics, like select the best answer question, but there are 2 core questions on our website. We have an outline of the application. You can see what those 2 questions are, but they really are: what is it you want to do, and how will you assess your impact? Those are the 2 main questions. So our narrative questions have large character limits on them, so you could tell us stuff. I'm going to repeat this a couple of times because this has been, for the last 2 rounds of reviewing applications, the biggest piece of feedback I have gotten from some of the committees. I have gotten the question recently of, would I reduce the number of characters available to an applicant to write their narrative response? And I've opted really not to do that because I know the way our form is built, it'll count a bullet point and the space and a paragraph return. All of that gets added into the maximum number of characters. But the reason they're asking me that is some people are really good and they stay right on point. They know exactly what they're going to address. They know what the issue is. They give just enough information to give a good understanding of what the issue is that they're addressing and how they're going to go about doing it or what the program is. Others have sort of gotten sidetracked down the left-hand street or down the right-hand street, and they sort of go off on a tangent and then they bring in lots of stuff. So the request from the committee is to think about what it is that you are explaining in the narrative. What is your need? Is it a program, a project, your organization? What is it that you're doing? And how is it that you need to get it done? What does it take to do it? And speak to that. Just because we give you 7,500 characters doesn't mean you have to use up all 7,500 characters. Okay. You might need them, but it doesn't mean you have to use them all. So that's the biggest thing. So ask yourself, what's going to keep you sustainable in the near term? What is it that you're addressing? What's the problem? And the question that we often ask that really panics a lot of nonprofits is basically, when you think about what keeps you sustainable, how do you get to your end goals? What is it that would either cause your program to become obsolete, never be needed anymore, or what puts you out of business so you go and open up the next one? If you're doing when you're writing those, keep specific, keep what your goal in mind, right? We are always interested in seeding programs. If you're doing that, you need to be far enough into the development process that you can answer, why is it important? How are we going to implement it? Who's involved? And how do we think it's going to affect our community? And then what is a plan for sustaining that if you're piloting? Christine, you have a question?
Yes, a quick question. So for example, you begin a program and you help us out with funding. We get additional funding. We have a plan for sustainability. Maybe I missed this in the beginning, but can you go back in future years and request funding to keep that program going or expand that program as it grows?
We don't prohibit a grantee from coming back and applying for further funding for the same program. If it happens many years in a row, we may have a conversation about exactly how stable the program is. But yeah, no, we don't require, it's not, even if we help seed a program or launch a program, or even the first few years a program is doing, we don't prohibit anybody coming back and requesting further support in future years. So
thank you.
Mm-hmm. Our types of funding requests can be program project implementation or ongoing program project development, continuing it. It could be the general services of an organization, could be training or technical assistance, could be technology or equipment, even capacity building. I will tell you that we prefer not to fund new staff positions, particularly if there is no plan in place to pay that employee their full salary going forward for however many years, because we are very cautious when asked about funding staff salaries to ensure that there is a plan in place for that person to remain employed should our grant not come through, even though it's a small portion of it, or some other funding that's involved, so that people aren't hired and then lose their jobs right away. So we are a little cautious with those. We have several funding partners and fields of interest, depending on what you are. I just do this to give them all a shout out, and so that people are aware of the many ways and many groups that are involved with us. I'm not going to read through all of these. GSB is continuing to partner with us. For those that may not know, GSB 3 years ago identified 4 community foundations that serve their footprint and determined that they were really good at what they did, and the community foundations had processes in place and were really good at what they do. And so GSB has partnered with each of us and provides some funding each year to each of our application processes. So we really appreciate their trust in our process and our committees, and appreciate that they continue to partner with us to add to our pool of funds available for grant making. So that's those two, but like I said, you'll get all these, these just explain what our different fields of interest are. Okay, let's touch really quickly for those on here who might be interested in Janvrin. The main difference between our general application, other than the maximum amount, right, which can be anything from the community, from the arts to animals to women and girls to health and social services. The Janvrin Fund is specifically interested in applications and programs that preserve, protect, and steward the land, waterways, wildlife habitats for the benefit of the county's ecosystem, habitats for birds and other wildlife, and the well-being and enjoyment of our residents. These are programs, projects, and services that must directly impact Middlesex County and could benefit any or all of the 15 towns. And the grant, but for those groups that might qualify for this application, we are not necessarily interested in the traditional environmental organizations. So we've had a school district, for example, work to educate their students on the impact of plastics on the environment. And they partnered with an organization to do this really incredible arts mural project, utilizing those while studying the impact. So we're very interested in entities and partnerships. This fund is also very interested in partnerships. We all are, but they are very interested in partnerships that are thinking outside the box about ways to incorporate stewarding, conserving, preserving, and enjoying our natural habitats, land, and waterways into the broader piece, our broader lives. So there's this known as, we're very focused for these as well on equitable conservation and stewardship, which is searching for ways to ensure everyone, regardless of ability, background, socioeconomic status, demographic, geographic place, has equitable access to getting out into the natural world and participating in the many programs. So this, it could engage youth, it could promote partnerships, it could be, someone asked us once, and I have it here on the next, they're like, these are all the outcomes. This is all the basics. So someone said, what is it that is? Can you give us examples? Well, we've hesitated to do examples other than the one I just gave you of too many of them, because then it starts to put boxes, because that's how you get really creative, innovative ideas. And when you get these slides, if you qualify for this fund, this will give you a little more information of the things that you could potentially think about and what might be applicable. So the main thing is, and this is a fund that, yes, does have a higher maximum. So I tell everyone, don't do this application just because it's got a higher maximum ask. if you don't hit all of the criteria qualifications, because I had someone do that once and then I had to call them up and say, I appreciate that you liked this application maximum better, but you don't meet the criteria. And this is another one where we will not be consider applications where we're the sole funder. If it can't be a $15,000 wildlife habitat program, and you're asking us for the whole 15, that this also needs, we won't be considered those, we're the sole funder. Oh, and one other thing is that while the land is very, and stewardship is very important for this fund, we are not accepting land acquisition applications at this time. So let's talk about how to find the applications. For those for those that have been through this, you'll know this. You won't. I'm not making any major changes to where you found the applications in the past. For those that are new to our process, when you're on our website, you have this middle bar, menu bar, and if you hover over it, things drop down, right? And on the left, so you're going to hover over nonprofits, and on the left, when it drops down, you're going to see 2 pages. One is called the general funding application information, and one is called the Janvin fund. So you click on the one that you qualify for. And on that, you will have lots and lots of information. You're going to have the budget criteria. They're all bolded. We'll have FAQs. It's in a PDF. You can download it and read it at your leisure. We'll have these PowerPoint slides. They will also have the required documents. So let's talk about what you have to prepare to go along with your application, right? We do require a copy of the organization's approved operations budget for the current fiscal year. Let me be really clear on this, please, because I have noticed recently this is what I get. I am not talking about a profit and loss statement. It's not that's not what we're asking for, okay? We're not asking for a month-over-month statement of activities report that shows every single month at the time you upload, right? Hopefully you prepare an annual budget and you and your board examine it and the board says, yep, looks really good. We can meet this. It includes expected revenue as well as anticipated revenue as well as anticipated expenses. And they say, yep, we're going to approve this. This is what we're moving forward. This is what we'll work under for all the main things. That's your operations budget. A big shout out to those organizations. I don't have anything, and I don't have the list in front of me at the moment, but if you are a newer nonprofit and you're still getting your feet under you and working on operations budgets and how to craft a really, one based on what your experience has been for the first 1, 2, 3, 4 years of your experience or of your existence here, if you're new, let us know. That may be, so we have some templates. We're happy. We can do a little workshop on that type of thing of how you begin to plan that out. And it helps with your own planning for your fundraising. Your operations budget, as I said, must include estimated expenses and anticipated revenues. Doesn't mean that's what you have to hit, but when you start the year, it's like, ooh, we need to raise X dollars. And where is that going to come from, right? Grants, campaigns, online donations, events. That's all you got to do. That's the other thing. I'm not looking for minutia. I don't need your operations budget broken down into the line item for pencils and the line item for paper and the line item for paper clips, salaries, benefits, office supplies, rent if you need to do it, utilities. Like, where is it? How are they? And as I said before, we're very nosy. We do look at your operations budget, helps us know where some, what, if something comes across our desk, we can say, oh, this organization does this. It's also doing a due diligence. As a reminder, the funds that we use to make grants have been donated to us specifically to do this because we have a due diligence policy in place to make sure that we're trying to get the money in the community and to also help make sure our nonprofits are sustainable. That's our goal. You do the programs. We're just here to help find some resources for them. We want to make sure that you are on the best foot going forward. If you're yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. We had a question come through.
Sure.
Would strategic planning fall under capacity building?
Yes. And yes, that is a need under capacity building that we have considered in the application process in the past. Oh, I know where I was. Sorry about that. And keep asking those questions, and Abby, keep interrupting if they come through. So raise your hand. If your footprint, your organization's footprint is larger than Middlesex County, that's okay. Just make sure in your narrative you speak to the portion of the program or whatnot that focuses on Middlesex County. The operating budget that you submit needs to really focus on what portion of your what is it for Middlesex County. So if you're an organization that serves, let's say, all of Connecticut from that encompasses Hartford County, Middlesex County, and let's say New Haven County. So what piece, how do you allocate your operations budget? If I wanted to know what portion of your salaries is used on programming and services directly in Middlesex County, that's the type of thing we just need a breakout. That's what you break that out. And we just want to, because we were trying to allocate that. You have very big, some organizations, not, I'm saying you in general, those of you that do that have very large operating budgets because you've got a very large footprint. So I would like to know of your resources, how much is being expended or set aside for the work that you specifically do in our footprint. Those that are applying for a specific program or project, when you're on that web page, you will see in Word, you download it, is the CFMC summary budget form. And it asks for itemized expenses. It asks for any soft or in-kind, and it asks for anticipated revenue sources. You fill that out, you download it to your computer, you fill it out, you make it a PDF, and then you will upload it to your application, okay? As I mentioned, even on that form, we don't need to know the cost of pencils or paper clips or nails, but don't just say program expenses, 4,500. Because that doesn't tell us what the expenses are. So is it marketing materials? Is it office, is it materials like office supplies? Is it a speaker that you need to hire? Is it renting a room? So what are the main expenses of that program? And I should have changed that. We are no longer, that should say CFMC cannot be the only funder. So oops, I will fix that in my PowerPoint. Abby, make a note on this page. I have a typo from a previous year. If you're collaborating, show who gets what at what piece, right? Acronyms. You can use acronyms in your narrative, but the first time you do it, please spell out what the acronym is, and then in parentheses put the acronym, because if you just give lots of acronyms, we won't know what those are, and it gets very confusing, right? As I mentioned, on your narrative, you have 2 narrative boxes. Be clear about your need, why you're requesting funding, how it's going to be used. Stay on point. Discuss your impact. If you reference the number of people you serve, please be specific about the service or the population. How do you measure that? And if you serve a footprint that is like 40 towns, but you know that we're only looking at our 15 towns, please only speak to the number that you serve here. I appreciate that you may serve 800 people in 40 towns. But if your services only reach 3 of the towns in our footprint and it's 12 people, I want to know about the 12, not the 800, because the rest of the 788 are not in our footprint. Okay. If you are offering a community outreach program, explain clearly how you notify and engage the community to either get attendance or participation or involvement. What are the specifics? Particularly for those who are new, but on our application, one of our demographic questions lists all of our 15 towns. Inevitably, we will get someone's application and they've gone through and they've checked the checkbox at all 15 towns. And then we get reading the narrative and they're only talking about 4 towns. If your application is for 4 towns, then please only check the 4 towns in the demographic boxes too. Okay. The demographic check each box for each town that you serve has to do with what you're requesting, not just in general, because you would really love to serve all 15 towns. It is okay if you only serve one town. It is okay if you only serve 2 towns. It's okay if you only serve 6 towns and not all 15. We're not looking for, there's no winner. There's like no big number winner in this contest. We know that we have some organizations that have a footprint that is very specific. Could just be Killingworth. I know Rosalind is on here for the Killingworth Library Association. You may get other people in from other towns, but your primary focus is Killingworth. That's totally okay. Mary Lawrence, you're right there. I know that you're giving backpacks to the Tri-Town area, and so that's okay. We're not, there's no winner here for picking the most towns. Please make sure that if your request is to service 4 towns, those are the 4 towns you're checking, because it causes, I always get the question from someone, well, they checked off 9 towns in the demographic, but they're only speaking to 3 in the narrative. Which is it, right? That's not a question. We don't like, just make sure you're matching all the way through. Total number served. One of the demographic questions we will ask is, what is the total number served by this program, project, or your organization if it's general operating support? This is not the census number for Middlesex County or for your town, okay? I know what the census number is for Middlesex County, and I can promise you I have yet to meet the program that actually can serve the full census for Middlesex County. If you serve 12 people, say 12 people. If you serve 48 people, say 48 people. If you serve 890, that's great, say 890, okay? But please don't just pick census numbers, because that's not an accurate measure of actually what you're doing. And finally, proofread, 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 and I can't say that again, proofread. Okay. Okay, we have somebody else. We could get requests from all 15 towns or just one. Should we base? So Ken, that's a good question. So Ken's saying that they can get requests from all 15 towns or just one, and show how do they base their town choices. So for that type of narrative, Ken, if in general, you usually have requests potentially come from all 15 of our towns, you can select all 15. And then in your narrative, you can say that a lot is based on where requests may come through. That you potentially could have requests in an annual year that come from any and all of our 15 towns. And you don't know from one year to the next, because a lot of it is based on where the requests are coming in from and where the need is. So in your case, you potentially could serve all 15 of our towns. And so you could definitely check off all of 15. When I emphasized all of that, it's in the past when people obviously don't serve all 15, but they see the need to check all 15. And then the more research we do, we find out they only served 5. So it's like, don't pick them if you don't potentially. Doesn't mean you absolutely will within the year you're requesting funding. You could possibly, because your program has that big of a reach. Here's the other big thing. As a reminder for those of you who have been through this process before, I think it's my next one. Nope, it's not. It's coming up, but I may jump ahead. And then I'll come backwards. So let me jump ahead, because I'm also watching the time, and I will, there we go. And Lori Lodge is on this call, and she gets the shout out for this, because she came up with the best idea ever, and I use it in everything we talk about this. So as a reminder, or for those that haven't been through this yet, our application is filled out on our website. It has the option to save and finish later. Unlike other platforms, you do not have to register in order to access this, but that means that your application, while it's in process, is being saved on a temporary server out in internet la la land somewhere, okay? So when you go to click save and finish later, you're going to get a pop-up box in the middle after you input your email address for where your link is going to. And see on the middle of your screen there where that great big blue URL is, and I've circled it in red, and it has a great big box that says copy this first. That is the link on the temporary server to your application. Copy that link. And here's Lori's great idea. And I always give her credit for this because I now share it on every presentation I do that has to do with our website. If you, the best piece of advice I can give you is to draft your narrative in Word so you can use spell checker and character count and all that other fun stuff. At the top of the page or in the header, paste that link. That way it's always with your draft narrative that you've been working on. You're sharing it with other people and everybody's editing it, but the link is always there. You don't have to go hunting for the email that may or may not come through from the website, may or may not get quarantined in your junk mail. You have it right there in the narrative draft you're working on. It's right at the top, because no matter how many times you do save and finish later and close that application and open it up, that link stays the same. That's your link. For those that will be new to this process, we will, fingers crossed, have the application live sometime tomorrow. Please don't email me at 9:15 because you checked at 9 and it's not live, because that means I may have run into some technological glitches. My goal is to have it live by midday, but if technology doesn't cooperate with me, I may not make that deadline. But the applications will be available for more than 30 days. These links are only good for 30 days. At the end of 30 days, that temporary server, poof, deletes your application. So if you're opening it and you think that you're going to start it on February 1st, but you're not going to submit it until March 7th, which is the deadline day, that's more than 30 days. Don't do that, right? I strongly recommend don't start the application until you're ready to start filling it out. There is a PDF on our website that will outline all of the questions asked in the application. Just pull down that PDF. You can go through. It'll help you get prepped. It's not a hard application, is it? Lori, chime in. Is it a hard application? You're out there.
The applications are really easy, and thank you for the shout out. I learned the hard way by starting early and having my link expire or not being able to find the link because if I remember correctly, unless it's changed, it doesn't have Community Foundation as part of the address that it comes from. I may be wrong. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But the application is easy. And I want to also say that Thayer is so good at talking through things with you, questions you might have, questions about whether or not your application is one that would be considered, or if you're kind of out there a little bit. She's very good about really putting you on the path for success and knowing the questions that the review committee will be asking and looking for, and what the board will be looking for, and the funders will be looking for. So pick her brain.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. I just want to stress, and if you don't copy that link, I can't help you. I don't have access to the temporary server. That's why I stress it to you so much. I cannot get that back for you. I have no access to that. It's just a holder server way out there somewhere in La La Land. So let's back up really quickly in the PowerPoint. Because I want to quickly, I'm just keeping an eye on the time, and I try to keep these to an hour. And I want to make sure everybody understands what's required with your application, particularly if you're new to us. Your organization operating budget, we've discussed that. Your list of board of directors with their professional affiliations. Now, sometimes in the past, we've gotten them with their mailing addresses and their emails and their phone numbers and their bios and all this. I really appreciate that, but no, that's not, we really don't need that. We would just like to know who your officers and directors are. And when we say professional affiliation, are they an attorney? Are they an accountant? Are they a retired professor? Like, what did they do? That just sort of shows us the skills that you're bringing on your board. Please don't send me their mailing addresses and emails and phones and all that other I appreciate that, but no, and we do keep it, we do get rid of that. For those that are 501c3s, we do require a copy of your IRS determination letter. Just to make sure you're still up to date and nothing is wrong with that and you have it to hand. If you are a municipal entity or a school district, you should have a standard letter that states that you fall under state and federal code, tax exempt codes for that. And obviously, if you're doing a specific program or project and not just general operating support, you do need to complete the CFMC summary program budget form, which is required, that you download in Word, complete it, turn it into a PDF so that you can upload it. If you are collaborating, if you are partners, one organization is the applicant and the other organization or organizations should write letters of support saying we're all in on this, we're going to share all our everything, and we just let so and so be the applicant. If you are partnering with a school district, if you are say an arts organization and you have contracted with a school district to bring supplemental programming into the school, you must have a letter of support from the school stating they know that you're coming, when you're coming, and how it supplements what they're offering, because it's not, and how it's not part of their regular budget information. And if you are not, just a sec, Christine, I see you got your hand up. Hold, don't put it down. I see it. If you are not a 501c3 and you use a fiscal or fiduciary agent as part of your grants application process, you must get in touch with me because we have a fiduciary agent form that we do require to have on file to ensure that your fiscal sponsor or fiduciary agent will accept a grant award should it be given to you. Christine, you have a question.
Yes, thank you. So if you're working with other organizations that may not be full partners, but letters of support would underscore the need for the program that you're suggesting, can those be added in as an optional piece? In other words, they're not all in on the money end of it, or they may be in on a minimal portion of that, but a letter of support would show the need that they have for the program we're suggesting. Is it okay to include them as an option? That's my question.
Yeah. We have always taken, so let me go back and talk about letters of support really quickly because it may answer your question. Partnerships or collaborations where we are looking for letters of support. It could be that both organizations are both putting money into the pot to get it done. It could be that one organization is going to handle all the expenses and the other organization has the boots on the ground to help facilitate it. But you're working together to bring that program to its delivery. It's not so much that you're offering youth programming and the park and rec in the town think it's a great idea because they have overflow and they're gonna send some people over to you. That's not, no, those are two separate things. It really doesn't impact what you're doing. But if you in the park and rec are partnering to bring programs for the park and rec and your youth to share summer programming at your camp, then yes, that would be great because they can speak to the fact that you have the facilities and you have, it's a great way to leverage resources. That's a partnership. That's a collaboration. But just because they think you're a great organization and they want to give you a rah-rah, no, please don't, because there's only so many places on the application to upload. And that also, you'll see there are very specific requests for information on the application that you're going to upload. I don't want 990s. I don't want annual reports. If I need those, you'll get an email from me and I'll say, I need your most recent 990, or I need you to email me a link to your annual report. We really try to keep this as streamlined and straightforward, both for you and for staff, because most of this information is reviewed by staff. So we appreciate how busy you are. And so we don't want you necessarily going out and doing lots of extra work because it's a lot of work to do a grant application. We totally get that. Let's see, Rosalind is asking, please clarify the other funding just needs to be. Oh, okay. I think I understand what you're asking, Rosalind, and if not, chime in, please feel free to unmute and ask me for further clarification. Because we are no longer considering applications, and we've even for any application, I'm going to say regardless of the whole sole funding thing, you do not need, if you have a program that is going to cost $15,000 to implement, and you're applying to us for 4,000, and you plan to apply to the Jones Fund or the Jones Foundation for 5,000, and you plan to apply to the Acme Corporation for 4,000, and then you're going to do a fundraiser for whatever is left over, right? That can, on our budget summary form down at the bottom, you can say pending, committed, planned. There's a whole column for that. You do not have to have everything else in hand at the time and received at the time you submit your application. We know new things come up, funding opportunities change. We just want to see what you're thinking of where the other funding may come from. But no, it doesn't have to be committed. It doesn't have to be received. It's just where else are you looking to help make up the difference? Because what we look for is if the program is 15,000 and your estimated revenue, including our grant, is 9,000, and there's no conversation about how you're going to find the other 6, that's a problem, because like, where's that other 6 going to come from? Have you even thought about it? Do you have any plans to find that other 6, that missing 6,000? That's what we're looking for. Did that help, Rosalind? I'm hoping, yes, maybe.
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Okay. All right. If you have a grant from a previous competitive cycle and you have not submitted your final evaluation, those are due by February 15th, please. If it is not fully expended by February 15th, if you had some obstacles or little, detours or whatnot, you need to reach out and let me know, because I have an interim that I will send to you. We're always looking for photos and stories from previous cycles. We're working on a new website or an enhanced website. It's going to have a whole new look. So we're going to load it up with some new photos. So those, particularly our previous grantees, if you've got any fun things to send me, please do so. I'm looking for some new photos for that. And I'm also working on the next community report. So please get those in. The timeline. So February 1st, tomorrow, fingers crossed, barring technical glitches, which I've just Murphy's Law'd myself, as you all know. The applications will go live tomorrow. They are due by 4 p.m. on March 7th. Now, let me stress this, everyone, please. Please mark your calendars. If you put a tickler in your calendar that it's the deadline for it, please don't have it tickle you at midnight of the 7th when the day is over, because anything after 4 p.m. I can't accept. And our website does timestamp them when they are submitted. Okay, so 4 p.m. on March 7th is the deadline. Okay, if you have problems, I can't stress this enough. If you have any technology issues with our application form, uploading the attachments, please do not spend hours of your valuable time fighting with our website. Please send me an email, because I usually have workarounds, or if it's a major issue with the application and no one else is telling me, at least you have and I can look into it. Applications get reviewed during April and May. Our committees will make the recommendations to the board. The board will review those in June, and then during the last week of June, we'll notify everybody of the status of your application. Grant agreements will go out top of July, and we usually have most of the grant checks ready by the end of July or early August